Moviegoers have always been captivated by what they don't understand, and one of the biggest mysteries of human nature is a dark one. Why do we kill? There's a plethora of social science research into the issue of murder, but it still fascinates writers and directors to this day, and takes audiences along for the ride. There are bad guys in almost every film, but finding out that a psychotic on-screen event was based on a true case drives home the point that monsters are very, very real. As you watch, let us know your picks for real creepy stories that inspired movies in the comments section. Here are Screen Rant's 10 real stories behind terrifying horror films. The Strangers. In 2008, writer and director Brian Bertino introduced viewers to a sick, twisted game of cat and mouse in The Strangers. A young couple is stalked and terrified by three mask-clad maniacs after opting to stay in for a romantic evening in their secluded summer house. As a child, the director's neighborhood experienced a wave of home invasions. The criminals responsible even came to his front door. Other insight came from the still unsolved Kitty Cabin murders of 1981, in which strangers murdered a mother and her children in a remote California cabin. The bulk of his inspiration, though, came from the infamous exploits of Charles Manson and his family. They were responsible for the deaths of 9 people over the summer of 1969, arriving at victims' homes and cutting phone lines before breaking in and committing the act. The Hills Have Eyes. Wes Craven has a taste for the disturbing, and his 1977 film The Hills Have Eyes is no exception. After car trouble throws a wrench in their road trip plans, a family is terrorized by a clan of cannibals through the Nevada desert. The Scottish tale of Alexander Sawney Bean, the leader of a clan of 48 cannibals, rapists, and murderers, is referenced throughout the film. Bean and his inbred horde lived in a secluded cave, leaving only to hunt travelers at night. The group left body parts to wash up on beaches around Scotland before Bean was apparently captured by authorities, dismembered, and left for dead. Borderland. Zev Berman's disturbing horror film shows what happens to American spring breakers after being kidnapped outside of a Mexican bar and offered up as human sacrifices. The film takes a lot of clues from the real-world case of Adolfo de Jesus Costanzo, a killer, drug dealer, and cult leader. Costanzo was born to a teenage Cuban immigrant and became a follower of Palo Mayombe, a voodoo-inspired religion brought to Cuba by African slaves. Raised by criminals, Costanzo started his career with grave robbing and eventually sacrificed close to 20 victims, many of them rival cocaine dealers. After his followers kidnapped a student outside a Mexican bar, an investigation led to his cult's headquarters, but Adolfo ordered one disciple to kill him before justice could be served. The Silence of the Lambs. This 1991 thriller shook audiences to the core, with the story of rookie FBI agent Clarice Starling tracking down a man called Buffalo Bill, who's been kidnapping, starving, and then skinning victims to make a female bodysuit for himself. In Bill's slaughterhouse, there are references to real-life madmen, including Ted Bundy, Jerry Brudos, and old Hollywood favorite Ed Gein, whose murderous spree inspired the most terrifying serial killer film in history. Bundy would often fake an injury to lure women into his car, Brudos dressed in his victim's clothing, and Gein did actually make a female skin suit, proving that real life is stranger than fiction. Psycho. Considered by many to be Alfred Hitchcock's best film, Psycho also includes one of the greatest villains of all time, Norman Bates. After a lady on the run checks into the Bates Motel and spends most of the night weirded out by Norman, she takes a shower of blood. The similarities between Ed Gein and Norman Bates are hard to miss. Both men had a habit of building shrines to their overbearing mothers, and even wearing some of their clothes. Raised in isolation and punished for making friends, Gein grew up taking care of his spiteful mother up until her death in 1945, when he began to turn human bones and skin into bowls, corsets, and lampshades, among other things, all of which were destroyed by officers after their discovery. The Exorcism of Emily Rose. It's known as one of the most unsettling movies of all time. The Exorcism of Emily Rose tells the story of an exorcism gone terribly, terribly wrong. After Father Moore fails to remove the demons possessing her, Emily dies, leading the police to rule the death a homicide and arrest him for the crime. As shocking as it seems, the story is based on the real-life case of deeply religious Annalisa Mitchell, who passed away in 1975 after a Cinecar exorcism. When treatments failed to cure her, Annalisa and her family enlisted the help of 2 priests, who performed the ritual in secret over 10 months. Malnourishment and dehydration were the official documented cause of death, and Annalisa's parents, as well as the priests involved, were charged, tried, and found guilty of negligent homicide. From Hell. The infamous Jack the Ripper killings of Whitechapel, London remain unsolved to this day, which makes the movie From Hell even creepier. The story is an adaptation of a comic of the same name, written by Alan Moore of Watchmen fame. While both sources take liberties with the accounts of Jack the Ripper's murder spree, they draw on facts as well. The film's title is taken from a letter allegedly written by the Ripper, sent to the main investigator in the case, in which he described removing and eating half of one of the victim's kidneys. The other half, he included that with the letter. Named for ripping up his victims, Jack roamed the poverty-stricken streets, hunting for women to murder and later dissecting their bodies. While some historians have linked 5 victims to the mystery killer, other estimates go as high as 11. The Black Dahlia. In Brian De Palma's period mystery, a pair of detectives try to track down the murderer of a young woman named Elizabeth Short. The movie takes a few extra twists and turns, but the real-life story of Miss Short is even more gruesome. Her murder in January of 1947 rocked the media, not because she was so young and beautiful, but because of what was done to her. Short's body was found unclothed and mutilated in a field. It had been drained of blood, cut apart, and posed in a chilling tableau. The final shock came after discovering that the killer had left her with a Glasgow spine, deep cuts in her facial tissue that extended from the corners of her mouth outward to the ears. As highly publicized as the investigation was in January of 1947, the police never caught the person responsible for her death. Scream. This was a slasher flick that spawned an entire franchise. Scream and its star killer Ghostface were created not long after Kevin Williamson watched a news report about the Gainesville Ripper. Danny Rawling was a one-man murder spree waiting to happen. He grew up with an abusive father who took every opportunity to make his son feel like a failure. Rawling was maladjusted to society and craving the kind of fame reserved for serial killers, so he started following in Ted Bundy's footsteps. After the attempted murder of his father, Rawling graduated to murdering 5 students and a family of 3 in Gainesville, Florida. He was arrested in 1990 on an unrelated charge and later confessed to the crimes, but offered no remorse right up until his execution in 2006. Zodiac. The Zodiac murders have inspired countless songs, books, and even the character of Scorpio from Dirty Harry, but David Fincher's film sticks the closest to the facts of the case and the 7 murders spanning from December 1968 to October 1969. During the investigation, Zodiac toyed with the authorities, sending coded letters to newspapers in the area. He claimed his identity would be revealed if the code was broken, and the media frenzy surrounding the slayings inspired people from all walks of life to try and solve it. The film highlights the librarians, reporters, scientists, and handwriting analysts who all lent their expertise to the case, but it also points pretty clearly at one suspect, a luxury that real-life investigators still don't have. The Zodiac's identity was never officially uncovered. So what do you think of our list? Let us know your picks of creepy stories that inspired movies in the comments below, and if you haven't already done it, subscribe to our channel for more creepy videos like this one.